But you can see that that works well with the neck guard on the helmet and everything like that. This is my first attempt at making hardened leather scales, heat-treated scales, and lacing them together in the pattern. I saw some scales in the Metropolitan Museum of Art from excavations in Iraq from the Assyrian period, made out of iron, and I didn't have any iron available, so I made these scales out of hardened leather. I used a hole pattern that was the same. So they had a group of holes on the top and the bottom of each scale. So the scales were rectangular, about 3 times taller than they were wide. I now know that most of them have 3 holes at the top and 3 holes at the bottom, which is very efficient. I did 4 holes because I picked the odd scale to make my copy from. That was my problem, not the scale's problem. So these are laced together with a braid, so that the top and bottom scale kind of just overlap, and there are holes in both of them, and the braid goes all the way through. So this is the front side. The reason I was interested in this was because a lot of the Assyrian bas-reliefs show vertical lines with what looks like a braided horizontal strip, then vertical lines, and I thought, well, when you see the scales, maybe this is the way they were put together. Mm. This is different from the reconstruction of the scales from Idalian, where the archaeologists reconstructed them with 5 strips of leather laced through to make this incredibly complex pattern. It was like they were knitted together. Mm-hmm. This one's just using 2 strips of leather. They start at one end and they overlap each other to the other end. Normally, the inside wouldn't be like that, but I realized that to stop the edges of the scales rubbing against your clothing, you needed to use that leather to cover the edges of the scales, and it was quite easy to do. I mean, it took a while to lace these because every hole has 2 laces going through it, so that can be quite difficult. But it's totally, I mean, it's got a bit of flex, like you could form it around your body, but it's very, very solid. And this is my first try at making deliberately hardened leather. This leather is basically knife cut proof, and it's only a couple of millimeters thick. So this is much better quality as armor than I thought it would be.
Here you can see it very clearly what Bede did in this black and white version of it. Close up.
Yeah, it's easy to understand in black and white. I think that was a good idea. But you can see it's. I mean, there's like in the top one, there's a break between one lace or one pair of laces ends, and the next one starts, and you can see like the folded over ends, kind of inside the braid. You don't actually have to tie knots when you do this. You just fold the ends over and then braid over them, and they're totally tight and good. But yeah, that was interesting. I'm going to have to try it with metal to see how practical it is.
And now
this is this is an example of 3 different types of scales. The yellow one at the bottom with the red lacing, which unfortunately I put down upside down, is the same as the scales on the neck armor of the big armor.
Yes.
The red scales at the top, this is my standard 4-to-1 ratio lamellar scales made out of leather, they have 11 holes.
Yes.
8 of the holes hold the scales together horizontally,
Yes.
and 3 of them are for lacing the things together. This was
Yes.
in the process of lacing. So to get the distances right, I did a couple of laces every couple of dozen holes. And then when you finish it, you just go through and they all fit together. But I'm going to take it apart and clean it and then put it back together because the lacquer I used on it, this was about 20 years ago or 25 years ago. The lacquer became very sticky and it attracts dust. So I'm going to have to clean that off and re-dye it and re-lacquer it. But that's very practical. I made several armors like this, and they are relatively light, relatively flexible. But a thing I've noticed about leather lamellar armor is it is really good at absorbing shock.
Yeah.
Like if you get hit by a mace or a heavy stick or something like that, it absorbs the energy really well.
Yes.
They're pretty good at piercing blows. These aren't fully hardened. They're about 3/4 hardened. Because there's lots of processes you can use for hardening, and the one I used on these, it's not bad. I could make them tougher. And the one on the bottom left, that's my newest project. These are steel
This one.
lamellar. Yeah. And they're the top pairs of holes are double laced, which means the same lace goes from the back to the hole above, then 2 scales down from the back to the hole above, then back 1 scale. So each pair of holes has 2 laces going through it, which means that there's virtually no space for movement.
Yes.
Surviving Tibetan armors where the lacing is fully intact, that's how that top row of holes is laced. And it produces, they're kind of springy. The whole thing is, that's sitting up in a curve like that. These are about 2 centimeters wide and I think about 7.5 centimeters tall. So they're the width of the hand tall and the width of a finger wide, based on a historical description. But actually, whole armors made of this still survive.
Yes.
So when I found somebody who'd made the scales, I had to try them out to see how good they were. The holes are 3 millimeters. The lace is 4.7 millimeters. So 2 4.7 millimeter laces go through 1 3 millimeter hole. That's why it doesn't move. It's not floppy.
Exactly.
This one, that was done with leather.
Yes.
This one is done with lace, cotton lace.
Cotton lace.
They're basically shoelaces. And because I wanted to make this armor fancy, we'd already made one where every alternate scale was red and black. That was the very first one we ever made. A friend and I made it, and it was very spectacular. On this one, we wanted to do bands of yellow and red. And so we laced the scales. The yellow scales are laced together with red lace, and the red scales are laced together with yellow lace, and the rows are laced together with black lace, and the borders are striped lace. You see that in Japanese armors where they have a wider lace to go around the borders, and I thought that looked really nice. That diagonal lacing at the bottom, there are strips of leather laced on the bottom row to protect the scales from wear and tear. These are shown in Persian miniatures, and I think in some Chinese paintings as well. And in Tibetan armors that have survived, they often have a double row of leather on the bottom. The back row is a continuous strip, and the front row is cut into little pallets, like and often dyed a different color, so it's very pretty. But its basic purpose is to prevent the bottom of the scale from wearing and the lacing becoming loose. It's quite practical. This is a part of a shoulder, and in a purpose-made armor. This is the shoulder from the inside, where you can see I've looped the spare lace back around the laces holding the scales together, because if something breaks, I can just pull a piece of lace out, cut it off, and repair it. It didn't seem worthwhile to cut all those pieces off and hide them away. With the leather lace, you can completely hide where the ends of the lace are.
Yes.
There are no knots in that, but you can't. You've got to use a tool to unpick it.
Yes.
That's how tight it goes.
This one.
So it's good. I have done leather lace on leather lamellar scales, and it works just as well on them. But I do like the fabric lace for patterns, and it definitely was used because it's in some of the Chinese encyclopedias. But you can see how that the lacing, the simple lacing is just diagonal stripes. The complex lacing is like a braid.
Yes.
On the front, they both look the same though.
No.
There's another way of doing the complex lace where you go through each hole twice, and then there's a diagonal. You go through each hole twice, and then there's a diagonal. That's the early version of it, like going back to the Han Dynasty. So we know that there were at least a dozen different ways of lacing this. But when you made the bottom row of scales, because you're making them one by one, you don't put those holes in the middle because you don't need them.
Because you don't need them, yeah.
Surviving lamellar armors, the bottom rows don't have extra holes in them. They only have the holes they need to stay together. And in fact, some of the Tibetan helmets, there's a row of scales that goes right around the bottom of the dome of the helmets. And the really good quality ones, the scales that are directly above your face don't have that extra hole, whereas the ones around the side do. On lower quality armors, they just got a bag of scales that were all the same, and so you have the holes are there, and they just put a lace through them to fill the hole. It doesn't do any. It has no function aside from looking pretty. But you can see, I mean, the leather scales you can make quite big, and they're quite functional. It's not so effective when you do it with the metal scales, because you can see how tightly those little scales were laced together. This is an occasion where I made my rectangular scales for this type of armor with a punch that punched out the scale shape and 11 holes in one go. So when I wanted to make shorter scales, I just cut it off at the bottom pairs of holes. So one hole was on the scale, and I had all these little scales left over. This one, it had the lower set of empty holes is from the original scale pattern. And I wanted this to collapse right up. So when you took the helmet off and put it down, it would collapse like the back of the helmet there. So I made an extra row of scales that were higher up to give more flexibility. In the best of all possible worlds, again, the bottom row of scales wouldn't have those spare holes, so you'd never know it was there. But these scales are roughly 25 millimeters wide, 4 millimeters thick. The dyeing process, dip dyeing the leather, makes it quite hard. If you pre-hardened it and then dip dyed it, you get exactly the same color, but it's even harder.
Yes.
And you know, you can see the well, you can see bits and pieces of the lacing that's holding the inside of the helmet together. I found this is maybe 30 years old. And needs a good clean, but they hold together really well. So if you were in a situation where you had access to, you'd do this with cattle skin, preferably steer or water buffalo or something like that.
Bede, if you make such an armor, if you make such a leather armor for the whole body, no, not for the legs, not for the legs, not for the arms, just like Joshan for the body. And also the shoulder protection made of leather. Could you make them watertight?
Well, these are fully lacquered, so the surface of the leather is treated so it's not.
Okay, I tell you why I'm saying that. You know that I swim a lot. And one of my projects before I'm going to get old and die was
Yeah.
to try an armor in ocean, right? And see how long
Yeah.
I can swim in that. But of course, as you know, that ocean water is very aggressive.
Oh, yeah. Well, what you would find is that the laces would salt up and get stiff when dried. It the laces would absorb a lot of water when it was wet, and you would get much heavier. Um, so the Japanese complained about lacing on armors, saying that if it got really soaked, it got really heavy, and
Do you think
but
I can hold on top of water with swimming, or do I sink?
I think you would float it first and then start to sink fairly rapidly. If I was going to swim in armor, I would swim in male, uh, because, well, people when they're studying sharks often wear full male bodysuits. Now, admittedly, they use stainless steel mail,
But male
but
is very heavy bead.
yeah, but this adds up. If this got wet, this would be very heavy too.
Oh, okay.
Uh, my that full armor without the helmet, with the shoulders and the legs and everything, the body, that weighs about 12 kilos.
Oh, so no, this is the same as a male. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This
So
is,
there is I mean, when people say, "Oh, leather lamellar is lighter than steel," well, yeah, it is, but it's not that much lighter
no,
when
it's
you
not.
think about it. And as you saw with those steel lamellar, the steel is much thinner, which means that it's not as bulky to wear. So I would, I don't know. I'm gonna see how much of an armor I can make with those steel ones, just to see how it behaves, because I'm really curious. Because I've worn the leather one, so I've got a good idea of what that's like. Um,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
did a calculation once, and a steel lamellar of the same size as the leather one would weigh about 1.8 times as much,
Yes.
maybe 1.5 if it was thinner.
Yes.
So uh, when you're wearing the armor, it's not as heavy as it is when you're picking it up. And this is true of mail or plate armor or plate and
Yes.
mail or whatever.
Absolutely.
So I feel that if you had access to good quality steel lamellar, you would get those in preference to leather armor. But in conditions where, like extreme cold and that, where you could get frostbite from touching metal armor, maybe leather armor is better.
You know, the
Uh,
problem is if you want to swim, make this test. How long? I mean, of course, I'm going to have a boat next to me. And if something goes, I'm a diver, I can just release it and come up and then go and fetch it up, right? If it goes down.
yeah,
That's not with the diving equipment. That's not a big deal. But the thing is not this. The thing for me is the following. If I put steel on naked skin and try to swim, you know what I mean? This is not a
yeah,
good
yeah. You've
idea.
got to have something under the steel, but you don't want something like a hauberk. Sorry, not a hauberk, a Akaton, a padded thing under it, because that would absorb even more water, and you'd get.
Exactly. That's the
But
problem.
if it was stuffed with wool, wool repels water quite well. I'm just thinking of if it was a Jorshan with shoulders, if you made it out of laminated leather armor with minimal lacing, because you can have like three laces here, a gap, three laces, a gap, three laces, maybe that would work.
I understand.
Maybe you could do it with that. So when we
Yes.
get onto the solid strip laminated armor, um, have a look at that and imagine, because there are Persian paintings from the Jalayirid period and maybe a bit earlier that
Yes.
show minimal lacing.
No, that's right.
So if you had a lacquered leather armor with minimal lacing to absorb the water, maybe that would work. It
Oh,
certainly work. I'll have to get some scales and lacquer them up for waterproofing,
yes.
and then see how long you can keep them in the water before they get soggy. Because even shellac or Chinese lacquer doesn't, but Chinese and Japanese lacquer like urushi gets harder when it's wet.
Oh,
But shellac, it's pretty good because you can use shellac to coat cups to drink water out of.
yes.
And shellac was well known in the Middle East.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. I must admit, it's something I never thought of, but you can fall in the water, so it's quite reasonable. This is looking up into the helmet. You can see that it's flattened that way. When you wear it, it's flattened that way because it does mold to your head quite well. The suspension is to keep the leather armor off your head, and if you get hit, to spread the force out. Because there's no point having a helmet that directly transmits the blow through the helmet.
Of course.
I mean, it was common in the Iranian cultural area, and among the Turks and certainly I think the Mongols too, to wear a separate padded cap under the helmet.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the padding was in the cap, not in the helmet itself.
Yes.
I think Peter Decker had a Manchu helmet that actually had a shaped cap that fitted under the helmet.
Yes.
And I've rarely seen them. So they're the kind of thing that doesn't survive well or gets turned into a winter hat because they're padded and they're warm. You can see that the sides and back fold out when they're laying flat like that. The bottom row is the most obvious one because
Yes.
it doesn't have
Mm.
lacing through the bottom holes. But that helmet isn't the strongest because when I made it, I did not understand something about those multi-plate helmets, which is they have those beautiful cusp edges on the top four plates. And I thought that the underplates were the same. So my one is probably lighter than a real helmet because the underplates, the four underplates, are actually straight-sided and are quite a bit bigger than the ones on top of them. Yeah, I did make that a long time ago, and I didn't have as much research done.
Yes.
But there's all kinds of interesting caps inside helmets. Well, you can see there how the outer plates are cusps. There's a helmet that I think comes from what we would call Greater Iran, like the Ghaznavid, the northern parts of the Ghaznavid thing, which has similar hole pattern, but it's got rivets in it.
Yes.
7th to 9th century, quite early. So making helmets of separate plates that are laced together is not uncommon, that are riveted together but actually have the same general construction as the laced ones, I think is older, because obviously Spangenhelm type helmets, there's some similar to that from, I think, Parthian times and Sasanian times. The Sasanians had several quite distinct helmets as well as the Spangenhelm type. But I think from northern Iraq, there are surviving ones that may go back to the 4th century BCE. So making helmets of separate parts is an old thing. The advantage of these is that if a plate gets damaged, you just undo the lacing and put a new plate in.
Yes, exactly. Not the whole.
Whereas when they're riveted together, you've got to drill out the rivets, and it's a lot of work. Incidentally, I now know I've laced that finial part on. I now know that the hole should be in the underplates, and that should be rotated about 45 degrees or something. But
what happened here, Bede? What is this? Is it a crack?
No, I think that's. See that red tassel? That's dyed horsehair. That is a piece of red horsehair.
On
the tassel.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, the tassels were made in China to put on spears. And I thought, well, they're made of red horsehair, which is, red dyed horsehair, which is exactly what the tassels on the helmets were made of. Why not reuse them? I think I've got a bag full of them somewhere. My Chinese martial arts supplier back 30 or 40 years ago was always amazed the things I bought in quantity as opposed to one. Everybody else are going, I'll have one of those. And I say, can I have 30 of those? because I can see a use for them in the future. But yeah,
Beautiful.
and in case anyone wants to know what my beautiful knob on top of the helmet is,
Yeah.
it's a cupboard door knob or a drawer knob. I got it in a hardware store and I thought that looks just like some of those things you see on top of helmets.
Yes,
And
just
hey, it
does.
worked.
And here it
It's
is from another
yeah. So you
way.
can see how the sides are kind of separate from the back. Um,
Oh, these
I
are these
based
hair. These are this horse hair on the helmet.
yeah,
Now I see what they are. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, when I some of the earlier pictures of these helmets from about the 1300s um, show that the ear guards are outside
Mm.
and the back of the neck guard, the nape guard, is
Mm.
inside the ear guards. But all of the later ones, like from the 14th century onwards, the
Yes.
ear guards are tied together under the nape of the neck at the back,
Yes.
so that the nape of the neck guard covers the backs of the ear guards rather than the ear guards covering the front of the nape of the neck guard. That was just a change in design. I think it's a better design.
Mm.
Manchu helmets are done that way. Um, I don't know when it came in, and I don't know, you know, I based that position on several paintings, which seem to be quite accurate. But again, they're paintings, so
Mm.
I could have been wrong about that. But as a helmet, it works. You've got to attach some ties to hold it on.
Mm.
But I'd taken those off a while ago to replace them. So this is inside the neck guard and the tops of the two shoulder guards, which are attached by two straps to it, two straps each. You can
Yes.
see that the scales on the upright part of the neck guard have a leather cover so that when they rest on your shoulders, there's no sharp hard bits sticking into you.
Mm.
Um, the other scales actually rest on those scales so that they're not a problem.
Mm.
If you look really closely, you will notice that not all the scales on the bottom part of the neck guard are the same shape because every now and then there is a wedge-shaped scale to make it flare out.
Yeah.
And again, that was based on surviving archaeological armors. It's really practical. You make a scale that has the lacing to join it together, but you make the edges taper in, and it doesn't have a suspensory lace because it's only like
Mm.
half a centimeter wide at the top or a centimeter
Beautiful.
wide at the top.
Beautiful.
Uh,
And
yeah,
this
that turned
one?
out to be really quite comfortable. Again, the inside of the shoulder, you can
Mm.
see on the right hand side that's a solid strip of leather laced on the bottom to protect it.
Yes.
Um, you can see there's a strap that goes under the arm to stop it from flying around all over the place. And
Yes.
there are two rings with two straps at the top
Yes.
to attach it to the neck guard. Now, since I made that, I found out it's most likely
Mm.
that there were two straps under the arm because I've just found some Gelirid paintings with people with their arms raised with a sword, and you can see a strap right up there,
Mm.
plus the strap that goes around there. So
Yes.
my guess is that two straps was normal, and it's a better design. And in later Qing Dynasty stuff, and again looking at Gelirid paintings, I've seen evidence of it in Iran that they're at that bottom row of scales. There might be three straps to attach to the bazuband
Mm.
or a separate sleeve armor. So
Mm.
that means that the shoulder doesn't fly up in the air when you're moving your arm around. It stays fairly close.
Mm.
Uh, Again, that was something I didn't know about at the time I made these, but
Mm.
bear in mind this was 35 years ago, I
Mm.
think. So the state of research on my part wasn't
Mm.
up there at the time. And I use again, I've rewoven in the lacing so that I've got spare lacing if something breaks.
Mm.
Uh, it's better than putting it in a pouch or something. You can just pull it out and use it. This is what I would call laminated armor, and I based this again on late Ilkhanid, Gelirid, and early
Beautiful.
Timurid armors.
I really love these patterns here, and you can see it here. You know, the PowerPoint
Yeah,
design made it bigger, so you can look at it, and I really love
yeah.
that.
I if I make another one of these, I'll gild those. Put gold leaf on them to make them stand out, because I think that's what some of the paintings show.
Mm.
You see the vertical lines of the lacing, and then you see a pattern, and then a line of dots, and then the vertical lines again, then another pattern. I think that was the original thing. Now,
Yes.
this type of armor, this one is made from single sheets of 4mm leather. It was originally 5mm, but when I dyed it, it shrunk and got harder.
Yes.
Back in the day, if you had access to water buffalo or cattle, you would make it in one piece. But if you had access to goat, you would laminate it up of several pieces glued together to make the right thickness. I think that might have been. It just depends on how rich you were or what areas you lived in, what materials were available. As you can see, the two shoulders are there's a harness in the middle. I think I put a picture in there of the things spread out. They're really light. They're strong, but they're really light. And it takes half the time to make these than it takes to make the individual scales. You could make these also out of strips of steel instead of leather. And I'm pretty certain that people did. I mean, in Japan, they definitely did. If you patterned this instead of with flowers and things, if you patterned this to look like scales, it's called kitsuke kozane in Japanese, which is basically imitation scales.
Before
It's
we
very
go
strong.
ahead, what?
Go on.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
say, I just wanted to show there are examples of this. This is not a char eine. This is made of leather from the Zand period. One of the few ones, right? One of the few ones. The front cine band, right? And then
yeah.
the one push band. Interestingly, it doesn't have bagal band, but I have seen char eine having two plates only. Most of them have four plates.
Well,
Plates.
in the book about Nadir Shah,
Yes.
you
Do you
pointed out
remember?
to me some of those guys were only wearing a back plate and a front plate.
Yes.
I mean, I think I'm not sure it's either the Royal Armouries or the Metropolitan Museum. There is a Shah Abbas full charina with hinges instead of straps made out of leather.
Yes, it's in Metropolitan Museum of Art. That's this
Yeah.
style, B. Do you remember
Yeah.
the one in the beginning made of is a Safavid period one? Which one was that?
Yeah.
This one, this one. This one, but made of hardened leather. Yes, the same style.
Yeah. I know which one you're talking
Excuse
about.
me, I
Yeah.
went so fast. You don't see that so I'm sorry.
Yeah. It is
Here.
sometimes.
Sorry, my apologies. It's a transfer time.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. The
This is
one on
also
the
Safavid, made of crucible
yeah.
steel, but the same again, as you said, Safavid period, but made of leather armor. Correct? That one you
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. And with its see that one, it's still got its lining in it. The one at the top is the one at the top the same as the one at the bottom,
No.
or is it
This is in
different?
Shiraz. This is in Tehran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the one at the top is missing its lining because a couple of
Yes.
100 years. The one at the bottom's got it. I think the linings were glued in
Yes.
rather than stitched in. So
Yes.
over a few 100 years,
Yes.
they come out. The advantage of gluing them in is they're easy to replace.
Yes.
But
So I just
yeah,
wanted. Oh, sorry. I just wanted with bead. We wanted to say. Also, this is this royal collection in Iran. This is from the Zand period. It's also dated. And another one from Zand period is this bazu band. We see that?
yeah.
It also
Oh yeah,
related
sure.
name.
That basil band is absolutely beautiful.
Yes. This is these ones and these ones are also in my book if you want to have more information on them. So you see, there are examples of them. But
Oh
again,
yeah.
there are not many, you know. This is
No,
something
no.
important to take into consideration. Now, people say, you see, they use leather armor. Yeah, but how many of them are steel and iron, and how many of them are leather armor?
Yeah, I mean, if 40 of them are iron and one is leather,
Yeah,
then it's not common.
yes, not common. Bede, before we are going now
Yeah,
to see some of the items Bede wants to show us, correct, Bede? So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to share? Okay, so then now Bede goes and fetches them up, and we will continue with our. So we are going to now to see some of the pieces Bede has made. So in real, not only on PowerPoint slides. Go ahead, Bede. Can you show them to us, please?
Okay, well, here is the Assyrian style armor.
Yeah,
As you can see, it's really thin,
very thin. Yeah.
yet it doesn't move very much.
Yes.
I mean, you can bend, obviously, you can bend it. This is the kind of thing that it was trying to defend against.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Can you show it the arrowhead again? The arrow again? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
oh, let me just check to make sure I'm getting the right camera. Yeah. So you can see it's
Yeah.
this is a cast bronze one. And the arrow is this is Scythian arrows in the West were quite short.
Yes.
So you probably you put the palm of your hand on your chest, and that was how you got an anchor point.
Yes.
It when you shoot like that, it feels like you're throwing stones. It's that kind. It's not like aiming.
Yes.
It's a different thing. So that was that one. As you can see, the lacing is quite intricate,
Very intricate.
but it's actually very easy to do because I'm terrible at braiding or anything like that. But that's quite a simple one to do.
Yes.
And you could have if you were an armorer, you could be out hammering out pieces of iron or something, and your kids could be doing the lacing because
Yes.
I mean they've got to work for their dinner. Um, this is the iron 9-hole lamella. Um,
Oh, that's beautiful.
so I ordered these from AliExpress.
Mm.
They were the most expensive lamella they were selling. But it turned out that everybody else was selling packs of 100. These are in packs of 200, so they weren't as expensive as I thought. But the holes are precision made
Mm.
so that the holes always line up,
Perfect.
which means you have no worry at all when you're making these. The reason that it interests me is that I want to make comparable pieces. I'm going to make 2 shoulder pieces and compare the weight and what they feel like and things like that. And if I get really carried away, I might shoot some arrows at them to see, like from an 80-pound bow or something, and to see how the arrows bounce off or don't bounce off. I'll show you one of the shoulders, the shoulder and neck guard from the other lamella, which I think I can put on. I've got to undo the buckles first, though. The straps are really quite thick leather because you don't want them breaking. And
That's good.
whereas I make the straps for quivers of thin leather because you would rather your quiver be pulled off than you be pulled off your horse.
Yes.
A different design set up. Now let me see if I can get this out.
Mhm.
Yeah, now I have. So this is the collar.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Sits
We love it. Yeah.
on your shoulders like that,
Mm.
and you can do up the straps. Now the shoulders, actually, I'll partially do up the straps on those and just slip my arms through them
Mhm.
because it gives you a better idea of how they behave. So
Mhm.
there's a strap under here which even I can't see. So if you put your arm through that strap,
Yes.
all of a sudden that moves with your arm.
Yes.
I'll do that with the other one. Uh, if I can find it. Ah, there it is. Uh, one of the things about when you make armor, you've got to work out, are you making it so you have to have somebody to help you put it on, or are you making it so you can put it on by yourself? Well, this one was made so I could put it on by myself. I just don't want to wreck my watch. So now both shoulders are on.
Mhm.
I'm trying to work out which was the hard one to get undone, and I'll do the other one up.
Mhm.
I think this is the easy one.
Excellent.
Otherwise, I'm wearing this to bed tonight if I make a mistake. I really should braid these back out of the way so that they don't get caught up in things.
Mhm.
Oh no, this is the tight one because finding the hole is really hard. Let's just assume that's done up.
Mhm. No
I'll do
problem.
the bottom one up. Seems to be easier. Yeah,
Yes.
that one's sitting okay. So see, they can hang down at the back when you want your arms free. If you're actually fighting
It
um,
comes up.
with hand weapons, you can swing them around. Now these aren't tight. When they're tight and you're wearing a padded garment underneath, they stay in place. They don't move.
Yes.
But you can see you've got protection right up to the lobe of the ear. And this is all wrapped in leather, so you can't hurt yourself.
Yes, right.
If you made them out of metal, you'd do the same thing. You'd wrap them in leather. But this covers you can wear this under the straps of the other armor or over the straps. It works the same,
Same.
but it's relative. I mean, you've got a lot of movement, but you've still got a fair amount of protection. One of my Chinese martial arts friends pointed out that when you were using a spear across your body like that, that this part of the armor covers the whole of that side of your body. So you've got the actual armor you're wearing underneath, and you've got this on top of it. So you're very well defended from, like a thrust. I'll take this one off and get the other one out. Luckily, it's relatively cool tonight. Putting on heaps of armor can be a bit of a strain in hot weather. So, to be honest, wearing this in hot weather, the advantage of lamellar I've found is it acts a bit like a bellows and
Yes.
pumps air over your body as you move, because each row is moving individually. This is the other armor. Now, to put this on, this would actually where those rings are.
Yes.
That's where a disc would go, like a rhino type disc. When I made this, I hadn't made any discs. So I have actually made the disc for it, but I haven't got around to putting them on. These are terrible to wear if you wear glasses. They always get tangled up. There's one of these that's gone funny, and I can't find. Oh, I'll just use that one. So the method of putting this on is that sits there. You reach back, and this is pretty much, if you can find both the straps. One of them's gone missing. Wait a minute. I'm just. This is really good for finding out how far you can reach back. I'm going to take it off and just check where that strap's gone. Well, I'll just take one off. That's all I need to do. There's two straps. So make sure they're in the right place. Try again. They're going over the back of the chair. That's why I can't feel them. Now I've got them. So you just grab those, pull them around your chest, and loop them through the ring. This is by far the easiest method I've found of putting on shoulders when they're not directly attached to the armor. So you just loop them around. Try not to tie them into your clothes. That's messy. I know this is not very exciting to watch. Once it's on, it's quite good. Wait a minute, maybe I should do it the same way as I did that one. That would make more sense. Over, 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 and under. So that's it. And that you've got full flex.
Very nice. Yes.
Um,
Very nice.
they give you good protection against blows,
Yes.
depending on what kind of other armor you wear them with. Uh, they really don't feel like you're wearing anything.
Yeah.
But the thickness of the leather is sufficient to stop arrows at about 50 meters. People got up close with heavy bows, you're in trouble. But the advantage of light armor is you can move much faster.
Mhm.
But as you saw, I mean, you can imagine, with a disc sitting here and a disc in the middle of the back,
Yes.
and possibly discs hanging off these straps on the side.
Mm.
This is the beginning of the China
Yes.
back in the 1330s or 1340s.
Yes.
And see how high that comes up?
Yeah.
That gives you really quite good protection up there.
Yes.
If you had a stand-up collar like the collar of the other armor,
Yeah.
you would be completely protected.
Yes.
I haven't made one of those yet. And the other thing is on this one, like the other one, it's basically 2 rings on each shoulder, but
Yes.
more research has shown it's more likely 3. So
Mm.
you've got a front one and a back one and a middle one to stop it being knocked up too high when you raise your arm. Because you see, when I raise my arm, the whole thing collapses.
Yes.
And then when I put my arm back down, it falls back down over the arm.
Mm.
So it gives you sufficient flexibility. And when you've got multiple straps holding it, of course,
Yes.
you've still got the flexibility, but it closes down much quicker when you put your arm down. So yeah, I find that quite useful. I'm not going to take it off. I'll put the helmet on just to show you what that's like. I'm definitely going to rebuild the bowl of this helmet. It's looking old. So the helmet sits, just above the eyebrows. These, when you've got straps, you can just tie them in. It gives you really good protection. These absorb a lot of energy when they're hit.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, some of the ones I've seen in the paintings look like solid strips like this, just with holes for the vertical lacing. And I think I made some out of rawhide once many years ago, and they turned out to be extremely light, but very, very hard. Like, it was very hard to penetrate them with anything. So I've got some rawhide. I would make laminated properly, so it would be layers of leather glued together
Yes.
and set into shape.
Yes.
There's a whole series of paintings from around in the 1330s, 1340s, which show a single row of holes instead of all these holes. It's just a single row of holes, and the lace from the top scale comes from the back across, back in and up. And so when you look at them laced up in the paintings, it looks like a series of the Greek letter pi, capital pi.
Yes. Yes. It does. Yes.
And it's a way of making solid rows with a minimal number of holes. Actually, maybe for the swimming armor, this would be the way to go. And use leather laces that have been soaked in leather dressing. Like leather dressing used to
It,
be things like
there,
sheep fat.
the reason is, that in some of these older Japanese schools of swordsmanship and kenjutsu, one of the, or not the only one, some of them have swimming in armor, but it's always
Yep,
half
yep.
armor and it's always leather armor. And then we were watching those miniatures Kawara movement. Do you remember some of them were fighting in a boat, or Sasanians were fighting in a
Yeah.
small boats? So the question is, this can't be only that the Japanese did it. What happens to you if you fall in with armor in water, right? So, and you don't have time to unlace it, and maybe you don't want to unlace everything. Maybe you unlace something in your leg, maybe you unlace here, but then when you want to get out, you don't want to come out naked. And fight.
Well,
right?
I mean, you think about it, people like the ancient Greeks, their armor was difficult to take off.
Yeah.
And the metal armor, because it had little pins and things. So when a ship went down and you had armor on, it stayed on probably, unless you were very dexterous. And a lot of people couldn't swim. I mean, it was very uncommon in the British Navy in the days of sail for sailors to know how to swim. It just
What?
wasn't thought. Yeah, no, they would never go in the water. If you're in the water and you're a sailor, somebody just sunk your ship, you're going to die. And oh, the other thing is that knob on the top of the helmet. It's great for taking the helmet off.
Mm.
But yeah, there's a lot of cultures that had seafaring traditions, but they didn't swim. The Greeks swam, but the English didn't for some reason. Um, and it may be that the nature of the sailing ships they were in, when they were sailing around, they had a kind of entourage of sharks following them because they couldn't, the sailboats didn't go fast enough to get away from the sharks. And whenever they threw any garbage in, the sharks would eat them. So maybe if you went swimming on your boat, you had a fair chance of being eaten by a shark. Because when you read old books about seafaring, there's a lot more sharks in the water than there are nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it was a lot more dangerous back then. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But this type of armor with that pie-shaped lacing maybe maybe the way to go if you want to go swimming. Because if you use veg tan leather lace and soaked it in leather dressing or saddle soap, it wouldn't absorb any water. Well, not for an hour or so. It would stay flexible, and it might work. It would be actually quite straightforward to make one of those armors because I was going to show you the full Jorshan, but really it's very difficult to show in this format.
No, it's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
have a video of you, right? Showing. I'm going to
yeah,
put the link here.
yeah. So, but what I was saying is, it might be quite straightforward to make a version of that with that pie lacing, that was waterproof.
Mm.
And this type of armor is lighter
Mm.
because the lamella has a lot of overlap,
Mm.
whereas this is just a single layer, and it's because it's integral, it's quite strong.
Um, yeah. Just before I forget, I have another question. Another question for you. What did I want to ask you? What did I want to ask you? Ah, I didn't. I didn't. I don't remember what I want to ask. But okay, go ahead, please. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'll just look into it to see how difficult it is to do.
Okay.
I think about 4 layers of shellac would be enough to keep the leather dry.
Mhm.
If the lacing was spaced at about 2 centimeters between
I mean,
holes.
if this weight is on my body, okay, my arms and legs are set free. I think I'm a strong swimmer, but I don't know how my body then reacts. But I can tell, when we have these exercises when someone is drowning, and I can just carry a man, I mean, grown-up man, on his back, and I hold like that. I can swim with him, right? I can do
Yeah.
that, right? Even if he doesn't move, I can swim, right? But then it's a different thing because it's not that weight. It's a human body, right? It's not that
Yeah.
weight. It's a
I was
different
talking
thing.
to a friend the other day about how difficult it is to lift somebody up if they can't cooperate.
Exactly.
It's dead weight. It is really hard. And even a small person
Yes.
feels super heavy.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's like when you pick up an armor and hold it in front of you, it is really heavy. But when you put it on, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, you get this particularly in
I
the
mean, it's not a
reenactors.
project which I want to do it very fast, but then the thing is, again, I have even if I do it, I have a boat, and even if I sink, I can keep my breath and let it
Oh,
go.
well, we can. Yeah, it's quite easy to make a quick release
Yeah.
system.
And then I can go up, and then even if it goes very deep, I can get a diving equipment and go back
Oh
and
yeah,
catch it. It doesn't matter. You
you could
know.
always tow a plastic buoy behind you on a long rope. So if it sinks,
Exactly.
you go to the buoy and pull it up.
Yeah, or like that, exactly, or like
Yeah.
that, exactly.
Well, as I say, just the Jorshan part, I think that's practical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Front opening, Jorshan, the front opening because it's easy to get to undo.
Yes.
With loops and a bow knot, single strand bow knot,
Yeah.
so that you tie the bow when you do
Yeah.
it up. To undo it, you just go pull, 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 and it's undone.
Yes. That's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
No.
I think that's doable. Um,
Yes.
I've often wanted to make an armor with that pie lacing because it is the extreme. I mean, there's another type that uses even less lacing where you have three groups of laces together.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
And there's three groups, then there's a big gap, then there's three groups, then there's a
Yes.
big gap. You see it in horse armor a bit,
Yes.
um, because obviously on a horse,
Yes.
there's so much armor that you can save a lot of time. I'm just taking this off.
Yes. Sure.
There's so much armor that you can save a lot of time by reducing the amount of holes you've got to punch in it for lacing and whatnot. But
Yes.
see, this is on the inside, there are very few holes. So that the part on the outside that's got, all this lacing, like the
Yeah.
double holes along the tops of the rows, that's completely covered on the inside because that's under there.
Mm.
So it's functionally really quite a good design. Um, if you made it out of metal, like 1.5 mil steel or something,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think its weight would be terrifying. I mean, these scales are
Mm-hmm.
0.8 millimeter, but you can see they almost are doubled over. So they're acting as almost,
Mm-hmm.
well, for most of their width, they're acting as 1.6. But where the lacing holes are for holding them in rows together, that's the thin strip, and that is roughly
Mm-hmm.
about 3 millimeters. It's 3 millimeters wide. So there's 3 millimeter thin strips on it. So when you think about that, that's a lot of protection. Now, I think sometimes people make things, they think, well, I've got to make the scale so it's at its greatest thickness. But if you're striking with a sword, it's going to strike a dozen scales at once.
Yeah.
So that
Sure.
those 3 millimeter strips aren't going to matter. One
Yes.
of my colleagues from many years ago was in a meta weapons reenactment group, and he made lamellar armor. And everybody said, "Oh, we'll cut all the laces in a fourth." He said he would have 40% of the laces cut, and it still wouldn't fall apart because your body inside the armor stops it from sliding around.
Yes.
So all you had to do at the end of the day was relace it, which for even 40% of the lacing damage, that's not a big job. I mean,
No.
it's like it might be a couple of days' work,
Yes.
but when you think about having to get a blacksmith out to fix a plate armor that's damaged, somebody sitting in their tent relacing it with some laces that they have, I think that's quite a functional thing. The other thing I found, as I said, the more complex the lacing it is, the easier it is to mend because it's self-supporting. So you just have to overlap a little bit and go and overlap it at the other end, and you get back to the original strength, which is, I mean, when I look at armor, I look at how do you maintain it as well as how do you make it and how it works when you wear it. Because if your armor is beautiful but falls apart, uh, and it has to be repaired, like
Mm-hmm.
every few weeks, then it's not real practical.
No,
I
that's
mean,
right.
and I sometimes wonder if some of that beautiful European plate armor was made so strong so you didn't have to repair it. I mean, it was the reverse of planned obsolescence.
Yes, that's true.
It was designed to last a really long time.
That's true.
Uh,
Thanks a
but as
lot,
you,
Pete. Yeah,
yeah,
go on.
it's an interesting subject.
It
And
is.
and leather and metal, I mean, they have different strengths and weaknesses,
That's right.
but the concept of lacing armor together
Mm.
is quite flexible in terms of what you can do. If you lace it too loose, it's quite flexible in reality as well. I mean, this, if you turn it upside down, it doesn't straighten out because it's too tightly laced.
Yes.
So it's important to remember that, it's
Yes.
a practical system. If it's floppy, it's not strong.
Yes.
And if it's not strong, it's not really armor anymore.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Bede. It was lovely discussion today, as usual. And we are going to keep in touch soon. And I wish you a nice day. Thanks, Bede.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.